Coming up on In Your Neighborhood, we'll hear about the small outdoor products company in our area that's shipping stuff to Japan and Germany. And the products were created by its owner. Plus, we'll talk with a Danville native who is a New York Times best-selling author.
Could your Wi-Fi service be more intuitive, proactive, secure, lovable? Guard you from conniving cybercrime? Give you complete control over every device? And turn connected devices into motion sensors? Relax and enjoy flawless adaptive Wi-Fi anytime and anywhere. Wi-Fi worth loving. HomePass from Plume.
Hello, everybody. I'm Carl Bauer. Join me as we sit down with some local sports legends of the past. From state champions to gold medalists, we catch up and find out whatever happened to those fantastic local athletes. Join me every Monday at 2 and 6 p.m. for Catching Up with Carl, only on Service Electric Cablevision, channel 508 HD.
Welcome to In Your Neighborhood. I'm your host, Chris O'Rourke. And if you like the outdoors, hiking, backpacking, then I'm currently in your heaven. I'm at Vargo Outdoors in Lewisburg, where they have all kinds of goodies like this, a titanium travel coffee filter. The thing is, you may not even know they're in downtown Lewisburg. The shelves were full of boxes at Vargo Outdoors' location behind Market Street. From those titanium coffee filters to sporks, fire starters, and bots, and we'll explain what those are in a bit. Vargo currently offers 100 products for its online customers and distributors that move their products to stores. A set of boxes were ready to leave here and head to a store in Japan, and they were getting an order to ship more stuff to France. So while you may never have heard of Vargo Outdoors or known that it's located right here in our area, outdoor fans around the globe are well aware of all that it has to offer. I found out about it from my son, who lives in Colorado and is into all things outdoors. Vargo does about 70% of its business selling directly to retailers or business-to-business distributors. 15% comes from website sales, and 15% is with Amazon. Owner Brian Vargo moved back here in 2002 because he saw a niche in the outdoor products business. No one was providing high-end outdoor products to distributors.
And then I moved here because there's a company in Williamsport called Equinox, and they were a distributor in the hiking and backpacking industry. And I was home visiting my parents, and at that time I had actually started a website called hikeadvice.com, okay? And it was just a sort of like a blog, what would be today's version of a blog about writing about backpacking and how to hike, what to take, and that kind of thing. And when I was home, my cousin said, hey, I know a guy who is selling gear in the hiking and backpacking industry in Williamsport. You should go talk to him. Maybe you could sell product on your website. And I thought, okay, that actually is kind of an interesting idea. So I went to go see him to potentially become a customer. And he said, well, while you're developing this e-commerce website, they were hiring, and he's like, maybe you would want to work here while you're doing that. So would be like a major life change, to do this. But I was like, this is actually kind of a cool idea. I never thought about actually working in the backpacking industry. But I was like, okay, so that's kind of that is how I got my start. is I decided, okay, I'm going to move from Seattle, come all the way back to Pennsylvania where I grew up, and start this business. And we'll work for Equinox, and then also start this business at the same time, which initially was just, a website, like a blogging website.
Within a few months of returning, Vargo decided that he wanted to sell his own gear, his own brand, because he had a lot of ideas that he wanted to design and create. And it turns out that he's really very good at coming up with outdoor products. The first one was his Triad stove, which was built with its own support legs and ones to hold up a pot, to replace alcohol stoves that generally come in two pieces. He also came up with a titanium spork and some tent stakes. Brian started off with those 3 or 4 products in 2002 and has added 3 or 4 to his line each year since. The whole idea in Brian's head was to create products that were stronger and lighter so that he could take a 45-pound backpack from 1995 and make it 20 pounds now. And oh yes, make the backpack too, so that it's easier on your body to even carry that weight. He uses titanium in his products because it's strong and light, and no one was making stuff with it back when he started.
So the products you developed right away in 2002, they found a market right away? Was there demand right away for them?
Yeah, there was, surprisingly, and that's the fortunate thing is I come up with these designs. So, my background is not in engineering. I'm more of the creative side. I come up with the ideas, come up with an idea of how to improve upon a stove or a backpack or whatever. And so that is, my strength is the creative side. And then typically I'll work with an engineer to get it into CAD, and then go through the process of developing prototypes, and then from the prototype testing, and then eventually having a product, developing, creating the molds and other things that we would need to introduce a product to the public.
How long does that process usually take?
It depends on the product, depends how complicated it is, depends on how much testing I need to do, but typically the shortest, I would say at least a year. From concept, concept actually I kind of go typically back and forth for a while, and then how do I want to do it? I do this basically all in my mind. I just create things, design them, and then I lay it out in paper, and then into the computer. So that actually is, I kind of go back and forth for a while, so that could take quite a while. But then once I get it in the computer, when it's in CAD, from CAD to production, at least a year.
He comes up with most of his ideas while he's out backpacking, and he tends to take 2 big trips a year, mainly in Pennsylvania, which he says has a lot of great trails. A lot of times, though, he hears from customers who either want him to come up with a new product or refine an old one, like the bot we mentioned earlier, which stands for bottle pot. It's an item that took a few years to catch on, but once it did, customers started reaching out to make them bigger, smaller, and with handles. Then there was the idea that he wasn't exactly keen on doing, coming up with a new type of trowel to dig cat holes, places where you would deposit human waste, to be delicate about it. Eventually, he did come up with a new design for one, took it to a trade show, and won the award for Best Design. The trowel is now being sold at REI.
Other trowels, they're basically like a traditional trowel, right? So you have like a spade and you have a smaller handle. So the first problem with that is the spade's pretty big, right? When you're out in the woods and you're trying to dig into the ground is typically full of roots, and it's not that easy to dig into, okay? So to have a big shovel and spade it's actually kind of too much, right? So first thing is I made it smaller, and second thing is because of the roots and things, sometimes you need to cut through that. So I made serrations on the side. And then the other thing I did is all the trowels that were out there up until then, they were basically just made from sheet, sheet of metal, and when you would try to use them, it would dig into your hand, right? And it'd be like you'd have like a mark on your hand because they were sharp on the outside. So I angled the grip part in a little, not only on the side, but also on the top, with the idea like you're gonna use it like this to push it in. And none of them had that feature. They would just be like rounded at the top, and you couldn't push it in. So like ergonomically, didn't make any sense. And the other thing I did is, is I thought, well, there are times I know when I go backpacking that you'll find an area the ground is really soft. And to use a regular tent stake, you push the tent stake in and it doesn't really hold. So I thought, well, it'd be nice to have something, since this is sort of similar to a tent stake look, that maybe you could at least tie this off and have a way to do that. And so so the top part was inspired with the idea of a boat cleat. When you have your boat, you go to cleat it off. If you look at that, this is the same design. So you can put the cord through and wrap the loop around, similar to tying your boat off. And that was inspired from that. So in the lowly trowel, there was a lot of thought that went into this. Yeah, it's multi-purpose. And as a result, like I said, it won the design award, and REI carries this in their store.
As for the future, Brian says they're about to put this out in about 2 months. It's an elongated spoon fork. He says most people want the elongated spoon to reach the bottom of their dehydrated food bag without getting any on their hands. So he says it seems only natural that they would need a fork as well. So to back up a little bit, Brian is a Warrior Run and Penn State grad who ended up teaching English in Japan, and then took a break from that to hike the entire Appalachian Trail, all 2,155 miles of it, from Georgia to Maine, over 6 months. It was after another stint in Japan and then 2 years in Seattle that he ended up back here. He bought this building and the one in front of it on Market Street in 2006. By that point, the company was doing well enough for him to quit working for the distributor in Williamsport and make this his full-time gig, which is when he also came up with the name Vargo Outdoors. And since that time, Vargo Outdoors has been growing pretty steadily.
We're still a small company, obviously, but we do really well for the category that we're in, I think. But we've grown, it depends on the year. During the pandemic was actually really good for us because everybody was going outside, everybody was using products, outdoor gear, and we're in that category, and so it was very, very fortunate. This company was very, very fortunate that the pandemic, that was the case. Unlike other industries like restaurants and things like that were really hit hard, our sales went way up. Right now, sales are a little bit down because of inflation, and so we do a lot of international sales, and the strength of the dollar is really strong right now. So it's difficult for a lot of the international distributors to purchase our products because what used to cost $1 is now costing $1.40 or so. And so that's been the hardest thing this year. Is now within the U.S., I think we're mostly fine, but our international sales, which accounts for on the wholesale side probably 40% of the business, that's really down. And again, it's 100% as a result of the strength of the dollar, which is related to inflation.
So they do really well in Japan and Germany, and we told you about the shipment headed to France. Brian has been to Japan since starting the company, and he gets a real kick out of seeing his products in stores over there. While much of his gear is targeted towards hikers and backpackers, there is some crossover into the hooks and bullets crowd, so you will find their stuff in Cabela's and Bass Pro Shops. Brian and his employee Wes are fairly busy here, shipping lots of stuff out on a daily basis. He says the only time of the year that they're really slow is from late January through early March. They are a 5-day-a-week company, although they usually have to come in on the weekend of Black Friday to keep up with orders. So this is pretty much a dream job for Brian. He gets to tap into his creative side for products for an industry he loves and does personally. He gets to see his products head out the door to stores, sometimes gets to see them there, and knows people are using them because he gets feedback. And the icing on the cake? He brings his 2 5-year-old dogs, Forrest and Piper, to work every day with him, and they love being here as well. So because Vargo Outdoors is trying to design their products to be smaller and lighter, to make your backpack smaller and lighter, they have boxes in their warehouse, their shipping area, that have 100 small cook stoves in one box. And that's all part of that effort to make things smaller. VargoOutdoors.com. When we come back, we'll introduce you to a man who grew up in our area who is now a New York Times best-selling author.
SECV, connected to our communities for 75 years. We provide communication services that connect friends and family. We're connecting with our neighbors through support of local causes and events, connecting our students and schools to a world of learning resources, and connecting you to the latest technology with local customer service. Our customers, our community, our mission. Since 1948. SECV.com.
If you're a fan of page-turning thrillers, then you may already be familiar with the name Riley Sager. His latest book is The Only One Left. It came out in June and is already garnering rave reviews. But here's a name you may not be familiar with, unless you're a Danville native, that is. Todd Ritter. He's the man behind Riley Sager, adopting the pen name for his first big book, Final Girls, back in 2017. That novel came after 3 very unsuccessful attempts at books under his own name.
They were like small town thrillers, a little bit grisly, and they didn't sell like at all, like bupkis. And in publishing, you're really only as good as your previous sales. And so I wrote a book called Final Girls, and my agent read it and said, "This is your best book, and it could be a big book. We have to send it out to publishers under a pen name." And I thought, why? And she said, in publishing, they look at your past sales and they make offers based on the past sales. And so we sort of needed a whole fresh start. And so she suggested a pen name, and I went through some ideas and came up with Riley Sager.
Ritter followed that book with 6 others, churning out a book a year. All have been New York Times bestsellers, and one, House Across the Lake, has been picked up by Netflix to make into a movie. It's all very heady stuff for Ritter, who was born and raised in Danville.
So what are some of your memories of this place?
Oh gosh, obviously high school, walking up and down Main Street, the library. I spent a lot of time at the Thomas Beaver Library. It was a nice place to grow up. Like, we lived not in town, but quite a distance outside of town, and I spent a lot of summer afternoons in the basement because it was cool and reading. And so that was very, very formative time in my life. It's just those summer days, just reading for hours and hours.
Ritter went to Danville High School, graduating in 1992. He says it was during that time that he contemplated writing his first novel. He thought it would be fun to try. He didn't know how to start one, and didn't actually try until Penn State. He went there to become a film critic with a major in film studies. Ritter told us that while that prepared him for nothing, what did help was falling into the student paper, which has a very good reputation and led to a newspaper job right out of college. That's where he worked for 20 years. When he decided to write, it was a thriller all the way.
I've always liked suspense and being scared. Alfred Hitchcock was a really big influence on me when I was a teenager. I discovered all of his films and fell in love with them. And, obviously I read a lot of Stephen King, with my parents knowing about it. And just, so I was always drawn to the suspenseful and the scary. And so when it came time to think about, hey, I might want to try writing a book, that was the obvious thing for me to try out, was just the suspense and thriller genre. And it's a lot of fun to write. It really is.
Ironically, it was King who created buzz and momentum for Ritter with his first Riley Sager book. Somehow, King got a copy of it and said it was the next great thriller, and it just built from there. While I'm no Stephen King, I started to read his books when I thought there was a possibility I might get a chance to interview him, starting with Home Before Dark and Survive the Night, and I'm currently reading Lock Every Door, and was pleasantly surprised to come across a reference to Danville High School and Danville, Pennsylvania. I find his books to be very good, with plenty of the 3 T's, twists, turns, and tension. Todd told us that he starts working on the next novel as soon as the previous one is out.
The secret among writers is we get ideas all the time. And so we have a lot of ideas stockpiled or kicking around in our heads. At least I do. And so when it comes time to figure out, okay, what is the next book going to be? I peek into my mental filing cabinet and like, okay, this one sounds right. This one I might want to spend a year writing and promoting, and this one I think it's time for this one. My upcoming novel, The Only One Left, that idea had been kicking around in my head for probably 5 years or so before I decided now's the time to tackle this one.
So tell us about that new one.
Yeah, it's The Only One Left, and it is very, very loosely inspired by Lizzie Borden. It is about a woman named Lenora Hope, who when she was 17, everyone thinks murdered her entire family. And she is now 71 and in very ill health. And so a home health aide named Kit McDeer comes to take care of her. And the thing with Lenora is she can't speak. She can't walk. She can't really move. All she can do is move her left hand. But she has a typewriter, and that's what she uses to communicate with her new nurse. And one night she types, "I want to tell you everything." And so it's the story of Kit helping Lenora type up the story of the night her parents died and the truth about that night. And it's very gothic and very suspenseful and very chilling, and it was a blast to write.
He says he'll continue to ride the Riley Sager wave and stick with the thriller genre. His fans couldn't be happier. It turns out there's a whole social media following for his books, with many positive reviews and ratings.
In the top spot, we have Lock Every Door. This, of course, is my favorite Riley Sager book.
I've been wanting to make a reading guide for Riley Sager for a very long time, but I wanted to wait until after his 5th book was published, which just came out in the month of July. It's called Survive the Night.
I am so excited. Today's the day. Look what came last night. It is Riley Sager's new release. I've been so excited to read this because I'm not sure how I'm gonna feel.
I am completely unsure how I pulled this off, but by some miraculous act, I have been gifted with an early copy of The Only One Left by Riley Sager, which is his new book that is coming out this summer. And I feel like I always try to request his books and I forget about it because they're just so hard to get and I never even think anything of it. And then somehow, miraculously, this one came through.
Ritter says he avoids social media at all costs because amongst the good reviews are some bad ones as well. And he tells us they can be pretty mean. And in the end, he just doesn't want to know about it. The other interesting thing is the whole pen name. Ritter tells us that it's no secret he's the writer. His name is listed right there in the copyrights. As for the Danville connection, his parents still live outside of town, while his sister is in Bloomsburg. He has plenty of aunts, uncles, and cousins in the area too. And when we talk with him about it, he said he doesn't get back here enough due to his busy schedule, but was planning to pay a visit for the 4th of July. Once again, The Only One Left is available at a bookstore near you or online, and Todd has already started on his next book. And we're starting on our next episode, so if you have a story idea, send it to IYN@SECV8.com or stop by our Facebook page. And that's going to do it for us. I'm your host, Chris O'Rourke. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time, maybe from in your neighborhood.